In Chapter 5 of The Naked Truth About Small Group Ministry, I dive into leadership development and deployment. The classic or traditional way of multiplying group leaders is for each group to have a leader and an apprentice or an intern. And it is the leader's responsibility to find, develop, train, equip, and release and that person for a new group. And it is the typical expectation by the church that that person will do that, that the leader of every group will do that in the course of 8 or 9 months or less. And I do not find this to work in America. I don't find this to be the case in America. It might work in a few churches overseas, although I'd like to say I don't even think it works there as well as one would think. And you need to go study a church to find out what they're really doing today overseas. But I do know what will work and what does work, and that's team leadership. My good friend in ministry and one of the Touch authors is named Michael Mack, and he wrote a book. At the same time I was writing this chapter on leadership development and the what and the differences of it, he was writing a little book called The Pocket Guide to Burnout-Free Small Group Leadership, which is the how. And it was just wonderful that God had orchestrated this for us. But the what of this is, instead of having the leader-apprentice model that we're so used to, it's the leader of a group being the point person for a team. And a team of 3, like Jesus had Peter, James, and John. He had a core team. The 4 of them leading a group and leaving the leadership position to God, allowing God to be the leader of the group, and those 4 meeting together regularly to find out who else they could involve in the group, who else they could bring in, and understanding that when they meet together in the presence, power, and purpose of Christ in their midst. And that's the reason that they meet. Scripture says, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there will I be also. That's what Jesus said in the New Testament. And but they didn't show up for their own agenda and ask Him to bless it, like asking God to bless pizza, which is not so good for you, but you still ask Him to bless it. It's meeting in His name and for His sake. And that team then, the 4 of them, can strategize how to let go of their personal agendas, how to help the rest of the group, not just when they meet, but how to involve other people in the mission of the group and the life of the group, serving one another, together serving the community, and living out a Christ-centered group. And what this does is it breaks the back of control for some leaders, and it also eliminates burnout. Because now you've got 4 people feeling totally responsible for the success of the group instead of 1. And everyone's happy to join a team where a lot of people are too scared to take a group. So this gives them an opportunity to work as a team. If you lose one of them, your group doesn't die. Also, when your group grows, that group could multiply 4 different ways or birth groups. And this isn't something that the church demands that they do. This is something that the team is constantly talking and praying about. Who's ready to grow up and move out of the house to start a group of their own? Another thing I really dive into in this chapter is multiplication means divorce in the American culture. And because of that, they've never had biblical community. Now they've got it for the first time in their life and they don't want to let go. I really understand that. So there really isn't any need to multiply a group the way that we've thought about it, where you half of the people go to a new group and you half of the people stay here because it's the right thing to do. And trust me, it's the right thing to do. Well, first of all, they're not going to trust you because you just divorced them, and they'll never think it's the right thing to do, even if it was, because you broke up something they never had before. It'd be much better to help these people grow up spiritually with discipleship and with missional living and realize I could do more discipleship and more missional living if I was out on my own with the people I've reached for Christ in this group. So it's just a natural progression. So thinking about group growth up to leadership and then moving on into the future for what they've got for them has everything to do with the way Americans live. We grow up and we move out of the house, we start families, and I end the chapter talking about legacy and the importance of a leader to think about legacy. Spiritual grandbabies, spiritual great-great-grandbabies. You know, I heard a guy give a really good sermon illustration a couple of weeks ago in a church that I was consulting in, and he talked about being required to go to the pearly gates on a regular basis to greet people that he'd reached for Christ, to be the part of the welcoming committee for those that he reached for Christ. And I thought that was really exciting. And I'd like to be on the welcoming committee for sure for those that I've reached for Christ, and I'd like to be busy doing that day after day after day when I die and go to be with the Lord. But what I'm looking forward to more is having people walk up to me somewhere in heaven and say, "Hey Randall, you don't know me, but a guy that you led to Christ and trained as a group leader on your team led me to Christ. And I'm kind of your spiritual grandson, and it's really nice to meet you. I wish I could have met you on earth, but I'm really glad I met you here." See, this kind of legacy can be developed if the groups are Christ-centered instead of man-centered, and we work as a team. And we have this grow up and move out of the house mentality as a part of, it's good for the structure if we split or divide or divorce. This is what sends a church out in every direction, and the pastor starts wondering, I'm not qualified for this. They've taken this to a completely different level, and it scares me, but I'm happy about that. So this is kind of what leadership development and discipleship and multiplication, the whole attitude comes by, and that's what's discussed in that chapter.